What do you think?
I think we're good.
Okay, we're good. Okay, I'm going to say a couple things written by Dr. Gallagher, I think. All right, today we have Ben Weir. He earned his BS in physics from SUNY Oneonta in 2020. During that time, he developed an affinity for computational modeling of physical phenomena. Not an infinity, just affinity. This culminated in a research project in which he used finite difference techniques to solve the wave equation for water waves in an enclosed basin. That sounds interesting. We have some students, Ben, who are also considering waves in an enclosed basin. However, Ben also had a strong interest in investment and finance. Upon graduation, Ben decided to merge his interest in finance and computational and mathematical modeling by enrolling in the Applied and Computational Mathematics MS program at RIT in Rochester. In May 2022, Ben successfully defended his master's thesis and graduated from RIT with an MS in Applied and Computational Mathematics. Last summer, Ben was an intern at Kroll Bond Rating Agency, KBRA, in New York City as a quantitative modeling intern. And after completing the internship, he joined Kroll full-time as a senior analyst with the project finance team. KBRA rates fixed income securities and does fixed income research. Okay, so
yeah,
no further ado, thank you, Ben.
thank you. Thanks for the introduction. I can just see the board, but thank you for everyone that's here. It's good to be back virtually at Oneonta. I miss my time upstate New York tremendously. But I'm excited to be here and excited to share with you the things that a little bit of what I did at Oneonta and then everything that I've done since then. So like Dr. French said, I'm currently working and living in New York City. I live in Manhattan. I live downtown and work in Midtown. I love it so far. I moved in June as an intern for the summer and then started full-time in September. So I haven't even been working for a year yet. There's a lot of adjustments and a lot of things I've learned since then. And we can get into more of that later. But so the intent for this talk is not to be technical and show you crazy math and physics and finance. One, because I don't really know crazy math and physics. But I just want to share with you, why I made decisions and how I made decisions and how I got to where I am and the struggles that I had since then and everything that I thought was a good idea and a bad idea. Because I felt when I was in Oneonta, I was only there 3 years ago, right? In 2020, I was a student. I wish I knew more about how to transition from school to the working world or from undergrad to grad school. And it's, no fault of any professors or anything or programs or anything like that. It's just, you're just young and you just don't get exposed to much. So let's where's my mouse? Okay. Get into it. Little overview, kind of the main points that I'll hit. Start with Oneonta, a little bit what I did as a student at Oneonta, right? Like Dr. French said, I graduated in 2020. I have a BS in physics. I didn't do the 3-2 program. I know a lot of people do the 3-2 program. I think I was the only physics major in my class at the time. So that's kind of funny. I did some independent studies. I was a tutor, which I think is very valuable. And then we'll talk about my time in grad school when I got my master's at RIT up in Rochester. That was a 2-year program. Talk about my graduate TA experience, teaching assistant, an internship that I had while I was in grad school, and then I think it'd be cool to show you a little bit about the thesis research that I did. and then the transition to full-time job, an internship at the company I'm working at now, and a little bit about what I do and what a credit rating agency is, and life as a big boy, even though it doesn't feel like that sometimes. So I think, I'm not going to talk about the classes I took or anything like that. I don't think that's very valuable because you guys are in classes, obviously, and you know them better than I do. But I think a huge thing for me that helped when I was a student was doing the extra step, right? You have to assume when you're applying for things or going into a new program or whatever it might be, that everyone in that program or in that application has the bare minimum, right? Everyone has good grades. Everyone has the same courses as you, has the same major. So what can you do to make yourself stand out from the crowd? And one of the things you can do is, take the extra step and do independent studies, do independent research. The faculty at Oneonta are great for that. They're very accommodating. You don't even have to, I don't even think I had a real idea formed for when I wanted to do my first independent study. I just asked, can I do research with anyone? And they're like, yeah, of course, we have something going on. Which is, not typical in a lot of programs. You need to usually have kind of competing for spots and stuff. So it's a real advantage that Oneonta has. So one of I think the big benefits that I found from doing my independent studies and undergrad research was, it's their first look at taking what you've learned in the classroom and your logic and reasoning and applying it to something, something more, right? No one tells you, okay, you need to solve this problem, or no one tells you that this is wrong. No one tells you how to do it. I mean, so you have guidance as an undergrad from your professors, right? But it's kind of like your first real look at, okay, how do I solve this problem? And how do I, bridge the gap between the application field, i.e. whatever your research field is, and your quantitative knowledge that you have, right? And like I said, it adds that dimension to your resume. It helps you stand out in the crowd. And you never know, exposes you to new opportunities. What I mean by that is, so I did the next bullet down. I did my research for 2 years was modeling seiches. I still can't say the word right, which is an oscillation of water in a basin, right? So it's just like the water just oscillates, and it happens in nature a lot in lakes and ponds and enclosed basins when wind hits the water, and the water gets kind of pushed to one side, and then the wind stops and it oscillates back and forth. And so we modeled that, but before that, I had no idea what that was, or even heard of it, right? So that was really great. And so that project really started when I was a junior, and I worked with Dr. Gallagher on this, and I worked with Melissa. I think she had done a talk. She's at University of New Hampshire, I want to say now. I haven't talked to her in a while. But I think she had done an alumni series talk a year or two back. And she was already doing research for this with Gallagher. And then I stepped in, and what we were doing was looking for species in the Long Island Sound, I was doing the Sound, and then she was doing a bay on Long Island. And we were using Fourier transforms to look at all the different, we took wave height data from, I think it was NOAA or something. And we were looking for, we were decomposing that wave height data, trying to find, dominant frequencies. Long story short, I didn't really find anything significant. But that led us to say, okay, let's take a step back, and maybe the assumptions in the model that we're using are not entirely, true for this particular application. Melissa had graduated at that time, but then I stuck around, and then we were testing the shallow wave approximation. So there's like this assumption that the depth of the basin is, below a certain threshold, and then you use a certain certain assumption to model the wave equation. And so Gallagher, I think he set up a Lego Mindstorm sensor in his backyard pool, and he had his kids jump up and down in the middle and created a siege. And then we used that data to then to test our model of a station, the wave equation. So what we did was basically we just took the wave equation, discretized it, Eulerized it. It was and then applied different initial conditions and battery conditions to try and see what was happening. It was a lot of fun, and I really liked it because it was my first look at really using MATLAB and computational methods to solve the wave equation, which I saw in PDEs and so on, I think quantum mechanics and in other classes. So it's pretty cool to see the bridge between fields. And we made a poster both years, and I think that when I was a senior, we actually submitted our poster to the American Association of Physics Teachers, and the conference was supposed to be in person, but then COVID happened and it was virtual over the summer. We couldn't go, but it was still really cool that it actually, kind of something came about it. It was pretty cool. And so that was, more formal independent study and more time and effort, more rigor than the one below, my financial engineering independent study. This was, a very, I don't want to say casual, but it was just me and Dr. Jones in the math department learning about financial mathematics. We found a book. I went to him. I was like, okay, I want to learn about this. What can we do? And he's like, yeah, I'll learn about it too. Let's do it together. And then I got some credits for it. It was great. So we found a book online that was, well regarded in the space. And we'd meet once a week, read the book on our own, come back, talk about it, solve some problems, and then do it all over again. I liked it because it was my first look at, quantitative finance. Turns out it's, really hard. But I learned the basics of how options, it's just kind of like a stock, but it's a little bit different. It's a derivative contract. So it's the price of the option is dependent on the price of the stock and time. So it's a second order PDE. It actually was, built off the heat equation. And I learned the basics of bonds and how these different instruments paid out over time. A bond is basically a loan, and we'll talk about that later when I talk about my job right now. So, two completely different kind of independent studies, but they both are valuable and kind of shows you that you can go either way with it. As long as the professors are willing and you have, either have an idea or you don't have an idea. So I highly suggest them. Next thing I thought that was, valuable from my experience was tutoring. So I was a peer tutor for half of junior year and all through senior year. And I did it at the library. I don't know if any of you are tutors here now. One, you get paid, so that's awesome, right? You get a little money for Friday night. And two, it really reinforced my physics skills and math skills. I did tutoring for physics 1 and 2 and the non-physics major physics stuff. And it was fun. You got to hang out with students. So oftentimes you kind of just get to know the students and get to talk to them. And a lot of times I didn't really know how to solve the problem, but you work through together. And then you get better at it. They get better at it. They kind of teach you things. They'll ask you questions that you would never think of, right? And you're like, oh, that's a good way of looking at it. It gives a different perspective. It teaches you to kind of grow up a little bit in a way. Each thing you do teaches you how to grow up a little bit, right? But the three things that I found were patience, right? Because some of those non-physics majors where it took a lot of, time and patience and really leading the horse to water. Teaches you how to, interact with people, right? Interpersonal skills, and teaches you how to you're in charge of whoever's there. So it was like basically office hours, the way I can describe it. If you haven't gone or haven't done it, you're just there and people just walk in and ask you questions. So you have to, control however many people, 5, 10 people at a time, and, make sure you're answering all these questions and all that. So you're the leader at that time. And it definitely helped me transition from undergrad to grad school, which I'll talk about in a second when I talk about when I was a graduate teaching assistant. So when I went to RIT, well, I guess why did I go to RIT and why did I do applied math? I remember I was a senior on Oneonta, and I was like, okay, now what do I do? I'm almost graduating. And I was talking to Gallagher, talking to other students, like, okay, why are you going to grad school? I remember a couple of kids were getting their PhD. Like, why are you going there? He's like, oh, I like this topic in physics. I like, find which area in physics you like and then pursue that. And I was like, well, I don't really like any specific, topic in physics, but I like the whole idea of physics, and I like problem solving and math and logic and reason and, logical implications, which physics offers, obviously. I wasn't a fan of pure math, even though I didn't really do it ever, but, I had to, in discrete math, I remember like writing little baby proofs, and I was like, okay, I don't want to do that. So I was like, okay, let's do applied math. And I looked into the programs more, and I looked about what it is, and I was like, okay, that's definitely something I can get behind. And so I think Gallagher showed me RIT. And at the time I was thinking of doing computational finance. But then I was like, I don't really know if I want to go into finance for my whole life. So let's keep it broad and go to applied math, and I can just focus applied math and finance, right? So that's what I did. It was great. I think it was a great decision. So what is applied in computational math? I guess a good way to, a high level summary is you're taking problems from, qualitative problems that people have in the real world, like how, why does traffic bottleneck or something like that, right? And then you're applying your math skills and bridging the gap between the quantitative world and their qualitative problems, right? And so that's the applied part. And the computational part is really just kind of leveraging computers and computational techniques and numerical analysis and kind of things like that. So the kind of the structure and the idea of applied math is to you take your core courses, and then you kind of pick an area, an application field of where you want to work. And so I picked finance. Other kids picked biology or epidemiology, or just, kind of, more pure routes too, that I saw. So the program that RIT offers is a 2-year program. You could probably crank it out in a year and a half if you just did the project option. I took 2 full years. You can either do a thesis option or a project option. The project option is you take, it's more class heavy. So you take an extra class in the thesis option, and you do like a little bit less research credits, and you just do a project, not a full thesis. And then a thesis is designed to be, more, research heavy, and you're writing a full thesis, and it's, more intensive in research other than classes. But I was scared that I was like, okay, I want to write a thesis, but what if I don't finish my thesis, or what if it doesn't work out? So I was like, okay, I'm just going to do both. So I took the extra classes for the project option, just hedge my bets, and also did the thesis as well. It kind of, it kind of bit me in the butt because I didn't devote as much time as I would like to my thesis, but I still thought it came out pretty good. It was more of a proof of concept. I'll talk to you about it in a little bit. And the extra class that I took was really valuable. But I thought it was a good decision anyway, even if it took a little bit away from either option. So I think applied math translates very well to anywhere you go. The hardest thing about the transition to any job you go into is trying to explain the concepts that you know and the skills that you have to the people who don't know them. So a lot of times the people who I work with or who I work with don't understand, they'll ask me to do something. I'm like, that's not possible to do. It doesn't work like that. Or I have an idea and they don't see like the value or the end result of that idea. And so, I have to then be that bridge between the quantitative math and the finance in my case, right? But you are very diverse as a studying applied and computational math, right? So you can kind of fit into any box. I studied in finance, I applied my math to finance, but you can go into, I could if I wanted to go into energy or something like that, right? It'd be a little bit learning curve, but still, you can still bounce around. And then it's kind of nice because you get a pretty big chunk of money when you graduate, allegedly. That's what it says on their website. So that was definitely a driving factor for me, and as it should be, right? So I'm sure that whoever other speakers in this seminar series have talked about their courses in grad school and stuff like that. So I won't go too much in depth, but I kind of wanted to give you a little taste of what I did, because I think it's still interesting to see. So the core courses that counted as core courses were mathematical modeling 1 and 2, stochastic processes, numerical analysis 1, and then you have to take grad seminar 1 and 2. Grad seminar is like an introduction of how to be a grad student, how to do research. So you're watching presentations. Every week we had a different presenter on a different topic of mathematical modeling. You're writing a practice literature review, doing a bunch of different things like that. So it was a big pain in the butt, but I learned a lot. And it's not like a full course; you get 1 credit for it, so it doesn't take that much time. Math modeling 1 and 2 were really, really fun, very creative. In the sense that, okay, we have a problem, how are you going to solve it? You can do whatever math skills you have. You want to model. I remember one of the modeling PhD qualifying exams was, I didn't have to take this exam, I'm not a PhD student, but my friends did. And they had to, so they're all real world problems too. So the city of Las Vegas had an issue with too many grasshoppers coming in the city. And because it's so dark in the desert, it's so bright in the city, grasshoppers are attracted to light. So, okay, we want to minimize the amount of grasshoppers that are coming in the city. What is the optimal, placement of light posts throughout the city such that the grasshoppers don't come in? I think my friend did an agent-based model, which is something that I can talk about later, actually used in my thesis. But so you're posed with a problem like that, and it's using all the different tools in your toolbox, and it's kind of really about creativity at that point. So I love those classes. Stochastic processes, really big in finance. Stochastic just means random. I don't know why math people try to sound smart and say stochastic, but it just means random processes. It's basically probability theory. It's how random events evolve through time. It was definitely the hardest class I took because I didn't have any foundation in probability statistics, but it was really, really cool. And it's now become one of my favorite things to mess around with in my free time. Numerical analysis 1 was a slugfest. You're doing I don't know if you guys are familiar with Euler's method or finite difference. So you're using numerical techniques to solve equations. So if you can't get x equals y, analytically or explicitly, you have to use, you basically got approximating the solution through different numerical techniques. I wasn't really a fan, but it's necessary. And then, so like I said, I focused my work, my major in finance. Kind of ironically, the finance that I'm doing now doesn't really apply to the finance I did in grad school, but it's fine. A lot of what I did was pricing of different assets and securities, managing risk, portfolio construction, things like that. I thought super cool. Things like Black-Scholes theory. I don't know if you've heard of it or not. But it gets in stochastic calculus, stochastic processes is like the preliminary step into stochastic calculus. It gets really hairy really quick, but it's really cool stuff. It's a basic stochastic calculus is basically like calc, but you slap on random variables. So you can't use regular calculus. You have to use a different kind of calculus, which is why it gets pretty hairy. My class that was like an elective, right? Remember I said I did the project and the thesis, was the principles of data mining and machine learning. This was an introduction to all machine learning and how to work with data and all that. So we covered everything from neural networks to linear regression to logistics to random forest, all those. In today's world, this is like the most useful, most applicable topics that you can use if you're in business. If you're in like business operations research, finance, kind of things like that. The world is dominated by data, dominated by computers. And if you can code and work with data and develop these statistical and machine learning models, you have a huge leg up on people. So highly suggest in your free time looking into basic machine learning. Machine learning can mean something as simple as linear regression or something as complex as like freaking ChatGPT, and I actually use ChatGPT like all day at work. So I was a TA in grad school, and one, I did it because I needed money. Right, I couldn't afford the full tuition on my own, so this helped me pay for tuition. And I think I really got one accepted to the program and got this position because I was a tutor in Oneonta. They need TAs, right? Because they need to fill the spots in the program. RIT has like so many, like 100 calculus professors, and that's a hyperbole, but a lot of calculus classes, and they just need TAs, they need bodies. So I reached out while I applied and said, hey, I was a tutor at Oneonta. This is what I did, this is what I taught. I would love to be a teaching assistant. And I remember I spoke with the program director before I got accepted, and I was like, okay, it went well and everything. And then I got accepted. I was like, that's definitely the reason why I got in. So basically, each semester you're assigned to 4 calculus classes. You do calc. I only did calc 1 and 2, but you can do, like, other kids did like discrete math and other things like that. I just did calc 1 and 2, not by choice, by just what they needed. You do a max of 20 hours a week, so it's like a part-time job. Sometimes it was less than that, like 15 hours, something like that. And you do, the typical TA stuff. You grade papers, hold office hours. You primarily assist workshops. So the way the calc classes worked in RIT was you do like 3 days a week a lecture, 1 day a week you work on problem sets. In like your whole class comes together and you all just work on your problem sets together. And then as a TA, you're really there kind of running that and facilitating that and helping kids with things, working on the whiteboards with different groups or whatever it might be. Like similar to how tutoring was, increase your responsibility, accountability. Each thing should, progress you more towards, maturity and taking on more responsibility, as this definitely did for me. And it really reinforced my calc skills and my math skills, and really helped me with my classes as a grad student. I'm, as a grad student, you're learning this math, but you're also as a TA relearning all of calculus, right? And so obviously the grad classes have, are built on the foundation of calculus. So it really helped me with my classes. So if you're looking for grad school, I would suggest try to get a teaching assistant. I was never a research assistant. That's another route you can go as a job as a grad student, but I highly suggest being a teaching assistant. Sometimes you're not going to like it. I definitely didn't like all of it. Sometimes you get bad professors, bad class, but overall, it was a good experience. So this is my master's thesis. That's the title up there, using the agent-based model and deep learning to simulate for market behavior on networks. I know it's a mouthful, but I was trying to get each aspect of it in the title for jobs, right? So they can see that all that stuff that I used. No one was doing the research that I did. No professor was doing at the time. It was all ideas that I was interested in, I wanted to do, which is one route you can take. Traditionally, professors are doing research and then you kind of jump on their project and then take the project a different way. That's at least what I saw from most of the students, most of my peers. For me, this was the time of the GameStop era and the meme stocks and stonks and all that during COVID and crypto. And I was really interested in, how is, all these people together, how are they like completely doing market manipulation and driving up the price of GameStop when GameStop should have went out of business, years ago. I'm sorry, if you don't know the GameStop thing, so what happened was GameStop is, it was valued at like $10 a share. It was, bleeding cash. Fundamentals were terrible, but everyone on Reddit, not everyone, but a large group of people on Reddit got together and decided to buy the stock and screw over the institutional investors who were shorting it, taking the other side of the stock, like hedge funds and investment banks. And despite the fundamentals of GameStop, the stock went through the roof because everyone decided to buy, right? A market fundamentally is the excess demand of buying and selling. And there was way more buyers than sellers at the time that, the price jumped up. So I wanted to figure out, how that happened, how the price, spread. So I used agent-based modeling, network theory, and deep learning as well. Deep learning was kind of an add-on so I can dovetail learning about neural networks, and doing my thesis at the same time. But so agent-based modeling, what that is you're doing like ground up modeling, right? So it's all basically on the computer. I mean, you have to lay out your equations and your fundamentals of the model, but you're defining agents, and in my case, agents are traders, and you give these traders different rules that they do, right, as they evolve through time, right? So a trader, let's say this trader buys at this condition, this trader buys at this other condition. And so you define all these agents, and then you have to define some kind of network, some way that they interact. My interaction between agents was social media and a market. So all agents can see a market at one time, so like the market price of the stock. They all check that at every time that they're activated, and then they all are placed on a network. And this network here, ABC, this little triangle, that represents a network, right? So if you have 3 friends, your friend A, B, and C, you all know each other. This represents your friendship, right? A knows B, B knows C, and C knows A. So we're a complete network, right? So you can take this idea and apply it to social media or whatever, it just shows relationships between things. So I applied it to a hypothetical social media network, put traders at each node, and then if they're connected, then they're allowed to trade with each other. And so what an agent-based model does is it generates all this data from all these agents, interacting with each other, buying and selling, market price updating. And then after the simulation is run, I had all this data, and then I want to say, okay, now I just completed this forward problem. What's the inverse problem? If this is out on the market, if I can get all this data from the market, if I can get the market price, social media structure, kind of things like that, then can I predict the network structure? If it's a family, if the network structure, because if I know the network structure and I know the behavior of the people on that network structure, then I can know what's going to happen to the stock price because of this agent-based model that I just did. right? So this picture is the basics of a neural network. This is like a perceptron, right? So you have your input data, your independent variables. They get all added up together with some weights, pass it through an activation function, which is, just think of it as like a logistic function, a function from 0 to 1. And then it outputs, at first it just outputs, these weights are all random. And at first it just outputs a random number. And then if that random number is close to what you're trying to predict, then those weights are pretty good, right? But if that random number is not good, then we use something called back propagation, and we try to minimize, it's like a least square technique, try to minimize that error between your guess and what you're trying to predict. So that's a pretty bad way to describe in high level of what deep learning is, or so what a neural network is. And deep learning is just a bunch of these stacked on top of each other, these weighted sums stacked on top of each other, and vertically and horizontally. So you can add a bunch of layers, and so it gets really crazy and nonlinear. So quickly run through what the model was to do the agent-based modeling, the forward model dynamics, simulating trades and simulating the market. So basically, like I said, I had traders on a network. Those are agents on a social media network. If they're connected, if you know each other, if you follow each other on social media, then you're allowed to talk about your stock price. So each guy has a stock price that they think, their perceived price. And then at each time step, we talk about it, we exchange information, we keep or get rid of that information. And then we have conditions if we want to make a trade or not at each time step. Make a trade, we send that trade to the market. The market takes all the trades at the time step, updates the market price, and then we repeat, right? So where's my mouse? On the right here, the market price is the stock price at the future time step is equal to stock price that it currently is plus the order imbalance, right? So big theta is the sum of all of the buy orders and sell orders at the time. Don't worry about lambda. It's just the speed of the market. It's the depth or liquidity of the market. Tells you how much, how sensitive the market is to these changes. So big theta is some of these little thetas. Little theta is a market order. The Q quantity of shares at a certain stock price you want to buy or sell. Plus or minus indicates a buy or a sell. Plus is buy, minus is sell. Add them all up. If there's 10 buys, 3 sells, we have 7 buys, and the price goes up by that much amount, right? So the quantity of shares that each guy wants to buy is dependent on, proportional to the amount of money that they have at one time. So my thought behind that was like, okay, and I found it in some literature too. The more money you have, the bigger your trades are going to be, right? If you're rich, you're going to place big trades. If you're poor, you're not going to place big trades. We don't need to talk about that. Don't need to talk about that. It's just how much their wealth. And so the perceived price is pretty cool. And the confidence probability is pretty cool. So my advisor had done work in rumor propagation on social media. This is kind of where I got these ideas, how rumors spread on social media. And so each trader, in my case, used information that they found on the network, which is this stuff here. And sorry for the draw in, there's a typo in my equation. So the perceived price of my current perceived price times some scaling factor, this confidence probability down here, talk about it in one sec. And then the perceived price of the guy I'm talking to times, the complement of this confidence probability. How much do I believe the stuff that I've heard now and the stuff that I've just heard from this guy? Plus whatever other information I'm using to trade, right? So whether it be some technical indicator of like a moving average or some fundamental analysis or what have you. And I'm taking the average of those two. And these other cases are for when not everyone has heard of the stock. So if you're talking to someone and so if you've heard of it and the other guy hasn't heard of it, if you haven't heard of it, if you've heard of it, non-zero, the other guy has heard of it, how can you exchange information? How can you gain information from him about the stock? You have to just tell him, right? And the complement, the other way of looking at it is if they have heard of it, you haven't, you don't know any better, so you're just going to take that guy's word for it. You're like, okay, sure, $10, tell me $10, I never heard of it, it's $10. And then the case where neither one of us has heard of it. And so the confidence probability, which is this little gamma here in this complement of gamma, tells us so at any given time, what are the odds that I am confident about my decision, my perceived price, is equal to the amount of wealth difference between the guy I'm talking to and me. So if that guy's wealthier than me, I'm going to believe him more than my own stuff, right? And that makes kind of sense. That's with this relative performance. And don't worry about this stuff. Okay, I gotta move. I don't have that much time. Okay, I'll go through kind of fast. So the network structure that I use, these two different network structures, these are representing how the agents interact with each other on social media. This is what's called a torus network. So everyone's on a grid. Information floats faster across this network than this network. This is a family network. So you are, in a tighter knit community. High level is basically information as it's flowing through these networks is perceived. We're talking through on the networks gets trapped in these little clusters of family. So this plot here is showing as time evolves, as more time goes on, more people are talking. The number of agents who have heard of the stock. So the way I didn't say this, I initialize one guy with the price and let it run. And so one guy has heard of it, no one else has, and how does that stock price flow on the network? Torus network, more agents hear of it in a short amount of time means it's flowing faster than the family network. Family network flows slow because there's a higher probability that you're going to talk to people that you're already connected with, in your own family. So information doesn't really get out, come in as easy as it does in the Torus network. And so basically, one thing that I found was pretty cool. I did end up getting to model the GameStop stock jump. I had two traders, a fundamental trader and a momentum trader. Fundamental trader trades like you're supposed to, basically has the market price reflects some intrinsic value. Momentum trader is kind of everyone jumps. If the stock price is going up in the past, it's going to continue to go up in the future. And so when you place these guys on the network, different proportions of them on the network, I found that there's this thing called a herd threshold. This is not a very technical definition of it, but basically, if you have more momentum traders on a network than fundamental traders, then you'll get this huge jump in stock price, right? So as people are talking, people are placing trades, people are talking, all of a sudden, it'll cross this threshold and the stock price will freaking shoot up like crazy, which is what happened with the GameStop. And when everyone basically kind of comes together and all agrees on one price and agrees to place trades at this price. And that's why the stock shoots up. Torus network is more sensitive than the family network. And this just shows the stability of a majority of fundamental traders. So this is a typical graph of what a stock looks like. More fundamental traders, we have stability. The market works as it should. More momentum traders, doesn't work. These are like the guys on social media, right? On the Reddit GameStop thing. So that was pretty cool. So now out of grad school, my transition to the working world in no time. So first I want to touch on networking. This is huge. No one told me about it when I was a student. I learned it from other friends and other people who are working. You really need to you can't just cold call apply, right? You can't just throw your application in there. You're not going to get any calls back. You're very rarely going to get calls back because there's so many applicants at once. So you got to start building your network. You got to start building who you know in the industry, right? So the best way to do it is to go on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is like a great way to get a job, great way to do this. You can filter by people, by job title, by school, by company. You can go within a company and be, okay, I want this job title within the company. And you can get all these people who are quantitative analysts for JP Morgan. I have found great mentors through networking, people who are just, I'm friends with, and they work in the industry, and we just, talk and have a great relationship. They've helped me get, figure out life and all that, pointing me good learning directions and all that. You can attend seminars, conferences, clubs. I have attended like a couple quant seminars, quantitative finance seminars. They're pretty cool. You meet a lot of really smart people. You never know who's there. You'll be talking to a guy and he's like, oh yeah, I'm so-and-so at this firm. Like, and you're like, this guy's worth like $1 billion. It's like, oh my, that's crazy. And then always try to be authentic. You can right away, kids contact me all the time on LinkedIn. Hey, I just applied for Kroll. Can you do so-and-so? Like, can you push my application or whatever? Just like I do all the time with people on LinkedIn. I reach out to people all the time. But you can right away sniff it out if a kid is just clearly trying to just get a job and doesn't really care about, talking to you. So just be authentic and, remember it's a two-way street. In grad school, I was an intern at Farm Credit, which is a bank just for agriculture. And I was on the data analytics team. They kind of it was a pretty new team at the time. They build credit risk models. They're trying to determine probability of default and all that for loans. So if you have a loan, how likely are you not going to be able to pay that loan back? My two projects for the summer was to determine a relationship between probability of default and credit score. They already had a high level relationship, but they wanted a more refined one. And they wanted certain cutoffs for certain probabilities for certain credit scores. So I built a logistic regression model to do that, which is pretty cool. And they actually used it. And then they wanted to extend a eligibility for certain loans to certain clients. And the way that they thought they could do that was trying to consolidate agricultural industries. So maybe dairy really behaves the same as tomatoes, which it doesn't, but maybe it does. So I was looking through their portfolio and just trying to determine correlation between different industries. In hindsight, this would have been a great time for unsupervised learning, but at the time I didn't know it. So I just did basic correlation estimates. First step into Kroll Bond Rating Agency, which is where I work now. So Kroll is a credit rating agency. And what does that mean? In the market, people issue bonds, right? So Apple wants to issue a bond, which is basically like kind of like a stock. So you are gonna ask a person or investor to give you money right now. It's like a loan. They'll give you $100 right now. You give them a piece of paper that says it's a bond and says, okay, I'm going to pay you back periodically throughout the year. And then in 10 years, you're going to get all your money back. So I'm paying you these little coupon payments in between, the agreed upon end date of when I have to pay you back the full amount. And so we, as an agency, we rate those bonds. So we say, how likely is it that the Apple is going to pay you, the issuer, back your money, right? And it may sound like a really small niche area of the market, but this is really critical for the market. 2008 financial crisis was because credit rating agencies were not doing due diligence, and because not my company, okay, of course, not my company. We were created after that, but the big ones, S&P and Moody's, they were giving high ratings. So like a AAA is the highest rating, and like A, B, C, D. And they were giving high ratings to really poor performing companies. just to bring in business, right? So if we are hired to do a rating, we get paid a fee, and then we'll issue you a rating to your debt, to your bond. So it's pretty cool. And you know, a reason why like whoever's issuing the bond doesn't just do this is one, conflict of interest, and two, it takes a lot of, you know, extra time and effort to figure out how risky this bond is. So that's why it's important. A bond is, okay, it's a contract. It's basically a loan. Like you go to the bank for a loan, it's basically a bond, but instead of you going to a bank, you're going to a company for a loan. Oh, the company's going to you, I'm sorry. So my internship was with the quantitative modeling team, which was a really fun internship. Really challenging too. I didn't finish my project until like the last like 2 days because it was just so hard. But don't let that scare you. It was I still got it done, right? So what this team does is they're kind of like the math guys on hire for the company. And if I don't know, like the corporate team needs a model built out, they'll go to the quantitative modeling team, and these guys will build a math model for them and give it to them, and they can use it for whatever they need. I won't talk about middle office because we don't have enough time. So the project that I worked on, that I'm still continuing to work on now, actually, that they use and they published a research piece on it. It wasn't my direct work, but I was working on a very small perturbation of the research piece that I'm continuing to work on now as was they wanted to see, okay, we knew recession was going to happen kind of soon. We knew the Fed was going to raise rates because inflation was going up. So what would happen to all of certain portfolio of loans if they had to pay higher interest rates because the Fed just raised rates? And so I was saying, my problem was, okay, what if all the loans got downgraded one rating from an A to a B? What was the required interest rate that would cause that downgrade? So it's kind of like a reverse engineering problem. I won't get into what the linear programming is right now. We don't have enough time, but I kind of like jerry-rigged what's called linear programming and did a brute force version of it, which is pretty fun. And then as an intern, I got contacted by the project finance and infrastructure team, who was kind of on the management side of the project I was working on. So they contacted me and offered me a full-time job after the internship ended. I took it. I never even heard of project finance. I remember meeting with my current boss, managing director, when I was an intern, and I went into office. I was like, "Oh yeah, so public finance. So what's that like?" And he's like, "It's project finance." I was like, "Oh, nice, great start." But moral of that is like, don't say no to opportunities, even if you have no idea what's going on or you don't even think you're going to like it. Always, have a yes attitude. Full transparency, I don't really like project finance that much. I don't really like that asset class and what we're doing, but it's a great job. It's a great company. I'm learning a lot about fundamentals of finance. I had good math skills, but I didn't really have any really good fundamental finance skills. So I'm learning a lot there. My day-to-day is to work on new rating. So a new bond that someone wants to issue, we have to do a lot more work to, do a new rating. And then also surveillances. So ratings that we have already done, we have to check up on annually. And so we do a lot of that. I continue to meet with the quantitative modeling team once a week. And I was working a little bit with them on ad hoc projects because I wanted to continue working with them. And then I'm also, like I said, continuing to extend this internship project with the corporate team. And so that's really cool. I get to work on that a lot. I just actually, as of like yesterday, just finally pushed out, hit a big milestone for that. And that was a big weight off my shoulders because I have full-time workload of project finance deals that I have to do, ratings and surveillances, then also do this really intensive interest rate stress stuff that I'm doing on the side. So, juggling these is a first job. It's been interesting, but really challenging a lot of times, but it's great. And I want to make is, yes, the content of the job is important. Yes, you should like the content that you're working on, but a job is definitely much more than just the content. One, obviously salaries, you're being compensated, money offers freedom, to do what you want to, is not just about, I want to make a lot of money. It really gives you the freedom to live comfortably and, take a day off or whatever you want to do. Does it offer good work-life balance? Are you working like 80-hour weeks like investment bankers, or are you not really working at all? Like you want to have a good balance, a healthy relationship there. Where is this current job going to lead you in 10 years? What's the career path, right? A big thing that I've noticed is who you're surrounded by. I've been exposed to really smart people here, really ambitious people, and people who have done a lot with their careers. And it's great to learn from them and to get that exposure. So these are the kind of like questions that you should take into consideration when you're going for job hunts and interviews and things like that. Okay, so I'll skip what project finance is since we're basically out of time. Some just quick things I wanted to mention before we ended. Coding. It's so important. But not so, okay, yes, it's very important, but if you can code, you're so valuable to any organization. You can never do enough. It's hard to learn, obviously, but just take things that you're interested in, like things that you want to learn about, and try to code it up. For me, I was interested in finance. I would take stock data and just like try to forecast the stock data, predict stock data, mess around with it, stuff like that. I think that's a good way to learn how to code. I never took prob and stats in undergrad. I really, really regret it because it hurt me a lot in stochastic calculus. And all the prob and stats that I've learned has been on my own. And it's really applicable to the real world. And anything you do in industry is going to involve probability and statistics, because it's really about precision and quantifying uncertainty. I recommend discrete math that pairs well with coding. I find myself going back to concepts in that a lot. And then data mining, machine learning, I already mentioned, that's huge. It's the future, data and machine learning. And then some, motivational little 4 bullets at the end. Most learning that I've done happens outside the classroom. The classroom introduces you to the concepts. It introduces you at a high level. You get a little taste, a little flavor, but to really understand something, there's a lot more learning to do, and that shouldn't be intimidating. That should be welcoming and exciting and inviting. That shouldn't be like a scary thing that I'm trying to scare you. It's just a fact, and it's exciting. Always step out of your comfort zone. You should be uncomfortable most of the time. It sucks, but you're not going to go anywhere if you're comfy and doing easy stuff. I'm stressed all the time, but it's fine. It's not, but you don't want to be stressed all the time, but you know what I mean. Positivity goes such a long way. Advocate for yourself, be social, talk to people. You never know who you're going to meet, and everything's hard work, right? Nothing is easy. Work your ass off. So that's all I have. Sorry, I went a little over. Thank you for whoever's here. Thank you for coming. It's great to, be able to give back a little bit to Oneonta. Really miss all professors in everyone, Nolenberg, French, Fox, Gallagher. Miss everyone, had a great time at Oneonta. And I wouldn't be where I am right now if it wasn't for the things that I learned and the people that I met and worked with at Oneonta. So big kudos to you guys. It was a great 4 years, and thanks. And that's it.
Great. Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, Ben.
Do we have any questions, maybe? Maybe one or two? We started a little late, so you didn't really go over because we started late.
Okay, great. Yeah.
I got a question.
Sure.
When it comes to independent studies and student research, how would you go about presenting these things that you work on in like your resume or even just in person to other people?
Yeah, it's a good question. Remember, I'm only 20. I'm 25. And I still have these questions too, right? How do you present the stuff that you know and all this research to potential employers? Honestly, it's going to sound kind of cheap. ChatGPT is freaking huge help. I use it all day. But regardless of that, I think on my resume, I put, I had my education, and then I also put in, my research projects, and then gave a little blurb, a little description, and you can kind of twist your words and not to say anything false, but try to tailor it to what the job description is. So if let's say you used, my example, I use finite difference in Fourier analysis, and I know I'm going into a job that's going to require me to, do modeling of I don't know, the wave equation. I don't know. I'm going to say I used finite difference to solve the wave equation, right? Things like that in my research. But I don't want to act like I have all the answers to that question, because I still struggle with that stuff too. And I hope that gives you some insight.
It did. Thank you.
No problem.
I have a question, Ben.
Yeah.
Okay, so you probably met a few or a dozen or dozens of people in your field and talked to them and figure out what their life is like, or what their background's like. How many of them had physics degrees? Half?
Very, very, very few. Physics is
Okay.
In a good way though, right? Physics is so valuable. When people see physics, they're automatically drawn to you. And physics, I think, really helped me transition to want applied math, right? It's obvious transition, but also helps me problem solve here at work with things that are seemingly unrelated. Very objective problem solving, and it forces you to keep the big picture and the small details in your mind at the same time. But I don't think maybe one or two people that I've met had studied physics.
But then you might say generally that people have a positive view of having a physics background.
Oh, big time. Yep. And all feedback that I've gotten from studying physics has been super positive. Yeah, goes a long way.
Chat box.
Oh, okay. Let's see what's in the chat. Can you read the chat, or I'll read it out?
I can see. Oh, just thank you.
Okay, thank you. Oh, good.
Okay.
All right. Any more questions, or?
Yeah, if you guys have questions or want to talk or interested in anything or talk about anything, reach out to, putting my information in the chat wouldn't help, but reach out to Gallagher or French or any professor, and I'd be happy to connect, give you my email, my number, give me a call, my LinkedIn and all that stuff. Call me anytime. I'd be happy to talk to you.
Okay. Let's give a thanks to Ben. So much. And I guess that's it. Concludes
Thanks,
our-
guys.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks a lot.
Have a great one.
Yep, bye-bye.
Bye.